Shalom, Kahala Yahweh, Ba'Shem Yashaya, Ba'Shem Kokodash. Double honor to my teachers, the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace and mercy to the elect, for the house of David reborn again in this generation. And Shalom to the 130 Yashaya, who today are known as the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, who before losing our true heritage, we were known as, and still are, the true Hebrew Israelites, of the Holy Bible. In the lesson that we're going to go in today, it's going to be regarding the Northern Kingdom, otherwise known as the Latinos and Native Americans, and how we are also under the curses which the Bible prescribed onto us if we were to fail to follow the law. But before we get into that, let's go and read the scripture in the Bible that explains what happened to the Northern Kingdom after their Assyrian captivity when they were freed by the Babylonians. Now let's read this. This is 2nd Ezra 13 and 40. Those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Yashaya, the king whom Salamansar, the king of Assyria, led away captive. And he carried them over the waters, and so came they into another land. But they took this counsel amongst themselves, that they would leave the multitude of the heathen, and go forth into a further country, where never mankind dwelt. So you see, in this scripture here, it talks about our captivity, when the Assyrian nation came up against the Northern Kingdom. And you can read about this in the book of Judith, and eventually in 2 Kings. But you read about how we were taken away out of the northern Israel and taken over into Assyria, right? And then after that, we stayed there for about 100 years, and then the Babylonians came and conquered the Assyrians, who they, for the most part, there's always been a back and forth war between the Assyrians and the Babylonians. They're pretty much interchangeable. They're the same people, but just for the most part, they're the same people. Right, when you get into their customs, one's Shemitic, the other one's Hamitic, but for the most part, these two nations were always at each other's neck. Well, like I said, after 100 years, after the Northern Kingdom was in captivity, the Babylonians came, conquered the Assyrians, and the Israelites, who were under the Assyrian captivity, were for the most part free to go about their business. A lot returned back to Israel, and they dwelt along with the Southern Kingdom. We have proof when you go into the New Testament. You read a lot about other Israelites who were around the apostles and the disciples who were of the Northern Kingdom tribes. Okay, but others decided to go elsewhere. Right, some went to Iran, India, China, but many did as what it said here in verse 41. They decided to go into a further kingdom where never mankind dwelt. Now this ultimately would be America, right? Let's go and continue to read. That they might there keep their statutes which they never kept in their own land. That they entered into Euphrates by the narrow passages of the river. For the Most High showed signs for them, and held still the flood till they were passed over. And through that country there was a great way to go, namely of a year and a half. And the same region is called Azareth. Right? And Azareth basically means an unknown country. Okay. And the other hint here is where it says a year and a half. It is how long it took to get to this land. And the reason why this is a hint is because when King Solomon was in rulership over the entire world, known world at that time, he had the Hamites, right, who were basically his navy force, come to the Americas, right? At that time they called it the land of Ophir, right? And it took them 3 years round trip, a year and a half to get to the Americas, right, Ophir, and a year and a half to come back, okay? And this is why when you go into the Southern Americas, you see those big Olmec, statues, right? That's who the Hamites, or the Tyre, who basically were King Solomon's navy were the ones who created those and left those there. Because again, they didn't dwell in that land, but they would visit it and basically, plunder it for resources and bring it back. Next, notice how it said that the Lord showed signs for them and held still the waters. Well, what that's talking about, the signs that the Lord showed unto them is basically the stars. And Issachar, right, the so-called Mexicans, because we've been given a spiritual gift of being able to understand and read the stars, right? Or what you would refer to as astronomy, right? The study of planets and the paths of the celestial bodies, right? We were given that wisdom, and we were able to navigate our way across the Pacific Ocean, right? Not only because we had the navigational knowledge, but also because the Lord held still the floods, right? Basically, the waves right there across the Atlantic Ocean, which is known as Hurricane Alley, the Lord calmed those waves. And when you get into Native American folklore, right? Their ancient stories. There's even stories when they came over here on the turtle boats, is what they refer to them, right? They're basically boats that had roofs on them. Okay, they refer to these as turtle boats. And they said that their God, which is Yahweh, right, our Father, that their God made the waters calm and still, so that when they could come over to this land, the Turtle Island, right, which is what the Native Americans refer to America as. Right. Well, let's continue. It says, "Then dwelt they there until the latter time, and now when they shall begin to come." It says right here, it's talking about the future prophecy that we, the Native American Indians and Latinos, also known as the Northern Kingdom of Israel, right, that we would dwell in this side of the world where the Lord brought us to until the latter time, until the end time, when the Messiah comes. And right here where it says, and now when they shall begin to come, that's talking about how the Lord would eventually bring over the southern kingdom, the so-called Negroes. Okay? So you see, this right here is the prophecy that told us where the northern kingdom went. Right? Not only that, but that the Lord was also going to bring over the southern kingdom to the same location. Okay? And besides this prophecy, right, or besides this historic account, you have this prophecy, right, that the Lord would punish us and he would ultimately bring us into captivity, right? And that he would do that in a particular way, namely that he would bring a nation against us, right? Let's read this. This is Deuteronomy 28 and 49. "And Yahweh, Yashaya, shall bring a nation against thee from afar, from the end of the earth, swift as the eagle flieth, a nation which tongue thou shalt not understand." So you see, this is ultimately what we just saw in that video. When the conquistadors and the other Europeans came against the northern kingdom that was here in the Americas, this was a fierce nation from the other side of the world. Okay, and they spoke languages that we couldn't understand, and they were a fierce nation that didn't. What does it say? A nation, verse 50, a nation of fierce countenance, which shall not regard the person of the old, nor show favor to the young. They shall, and that's exactly what happened, right? When you look at all the deeds that these Europeans did, right? Not only just the Spaniards, but it was also the English, the Dutch, the German, right? All these European countries, basically all the places that Esau had reigned over, came over here and basically used us, right? As chattel, as for labor, right? To get everything that they needed. And all these images right here, you're able to see. Let's zoom in. Take a look, right? This is how we converted to Catholicism, right? When Christopher Columbus and all those other devils came. Here's an image showing abductions of the Latinos, right? Spaniards coming, right? Us being presented as gifts to the Queen Isabella and I think King Ferdinand, I believe, of Spain. right? And these people, they were also Israelites, right? They were a mixed breed, right? Now she wasn't, right? She was a Edomite, I believe, but the king was, right? He was of the descendant of the southern kingdom that had taken over Rome and that eventually went on to rule over Europe, right? These devils would take 13 of us Latinos, right, and hang us up. And this 13 would represent the 12 disciples plus Jesus, right, or so-called Jesus, right? But that shows you how these devils got down. Look, and here they are smashing our babies against the rocks, right? So this is what a fierce nation does, right? When they came and they would destroy our campsites, right? They would cut off limbs when we didn't bring them enough gold. They use our children for sexual pleasures, as it tells you in the Bible, right? They took advantage of our women, right? And again, they ultimately converted us to religion, because again, we had been following, very loosely, that is, the religions, or the truth that we had tried to keep, but eventually we had fallen away from it, okay? And ultimately, we had now converted to another false religion. But yeah, in these books here, Christopher Columbus and the participation of the Jews in the Spanish and Portuguese discovery, it tells you, it says, they had temples and carried a holy ark before them in time of war. They were also like the 10 tribes inclined to idol worship. All writers and travelers agree, moreover, that there were many Jewish types of faces amongst the Indians and Aborigines in America. Right now, when it says Jewish faces, it's talking about so-called black people. Because again, when they found us over here, we were basically a dark-skinned people, right? Until we got mixed with them. Okay, here's another book called The Origins of the American Indians by L. Lee E. Huddleston, right? It says, the Mexicans are originally of the 10 tribes captured by Salamansar and the family of Issachar, whom the Indians recognize as their special ancestor. Come on, people. Now let's read this. It says, let's zoom in a little more. This is from The Devastation of the Indies, a brief account by Bartolome de las Casas, right? He was a missionary, okay? It says, the Spanish broke up marriages, separated husbands and wives, robbed couples of their children, took for themselves the wives and daughters of the people, or gave them to the sailors and soldiers as consolation, and the sailors bore them away on the vessels that were crowded with Indians, all of them dying of hunger and thirst. And truth to say, if one wanted to tell about this in detail or describe all the cruelties perpetrated, it would make a big book that would horrify the world. So you see that? This shows you that we went away on ships. We were taken away captives on ships, right? And all the detestable things that they alluded to here. In this book here called The History of the Indies of New Spain by Fray Diego Duran, it says, when the Spanish friars first set foot on American soil, they observed and recorded native religious ceremonies and rituals. They were puzzled when they found that the indigenous concepts and practices were, in many ways, quite similar to Roman Catholic practices. The natives not only practiced confession and penance, Lent, last rites, and Holy Communion, they had their own version of the 10 Commandments, except theirs were 8, but were very similar. At one particular ceremony, Father Diego Duran recorded an oration regarding the 8 Indian commandments from the Aztec priest in the mid-1500s. So you see that, man? That's proof. These are recorded histories of what they found here in the Americas when they found us. Okay, and this is ultimately why they destroyed us. Because when we came here, like I said, we came down through the Euphrates, we went around the Horn of Africa, right? The Lord made the waters still. He calmed the waters for us, and He showed us signs, and we landed here in Azareth, the unknown lands. And then the Lord brought that fierce nation against us, right? And did all these abominable things. And then while we were over here, the Lord then brought Edom, who was from the other side of the earth here in the Americas, brought him to Africa to basically capture the southern kingdom and bring them here to America. And why is that? Well, because of this. It's Deuteronomy 28 and 68. And Yahweh, Bashem Yashaya, shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again, and there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. Right? Which also may mean redeem you, save you. Now, that right there happened to both the northern and southern kingdom. Right? First, the northern kingdom, we came over here on ships, plain and simple. Now it took 1,500 years for us to then go into captivity. But besides that, when you also get into, what was going on to us while we were in captivity, we were being taken on ships all over the world. We were getting taken back to England, as you've seen in that image, when we were being presented as gifts to the king and queen of Spain. Avila, Spain was a large slavery port where a lot of Indians were taken. And besides that, I'm going to show you, let's watch a video where they found a Mayan slave ship that proves that we were taken against our will.
This debris on the seafloor is all that remains of a 160-year-old slave ship. Mexican scientists recently identified the vessel as La Unión, believed to have gone down in September of 1861.
The big takeaway after uniting this multidisciplined investigation is that we know for a fact this is the steamboat La Unión, which sank on September 19, 1861. We also know that apart from the cargo that was being hauled to Cuba, there were Mayans illegally held captive aboard.
Though the wreckage of the ship was first located in 2017, researchers are still shining a light into its history.
The wreck of La Unión off the coast of the Yucatan Peninsula is the first ever Mayan slave ship ever to be identified. Researchers say it provides evidence of the enslavement of indigenous people long after the abolishment of slavery in Mexico.
So there we have it. Right? The proof's all there. So a lot of people out there who are ignorant and saying all the 12 tribes are so-called black people, they're willfully ignorant. Okay? Because the 12 tribes of Israel today are the Negro, Latino, Native Americans. And anybody's whose father's lineage goes back to that bloodline. Now let's read this. This is Baruch 2 and 30. For I knew that they would not hear me, because it is a stiff-necked people. But in the land of their captivity, they shall remember themselves. And it was just the other day when I was watching the elder Menatazak, where Issacharite came up to him, right? And he already knew about this truth, right? He even said that he was of the tribe of Issachar, but that one of his co-workers had told him, but that he hadn't really paid too much attention to that. But you see, little by little, we're starting to remember ourselves in the land of our captivity, right? And why is that? Well, because this has been written, and this is true, right? This will come to pass, people, right? And this is why the Lord is bringing out this information to us, so we can remember who we were, what our history was, so that way we can be prepared for when He comes back. So hopefully this video was edifying. Hopefully you liked that video in the beginning. So next time I want to give all honor and glory and praises to Yahweh, Bashem Yashaya, Bashem Kodash. Double honors to my teachers, the apostles and elders of the great millstone. Peace and mercy to the elect. Shalom.